Welcome everybody to Tales from the Tackle Shop. I think we're on episode 18 of the lockdown season, which we're going to call this the season of no fishing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. Have you been out at all?
Nope. No, not at all.
No.
Oh, no, that's a lie. That is a lie. I went, not last week, week before, I did a little feature for match fishing at Welney on the old Bedford. And that is the only time since Christmas. So,
Wow. You've been once in nearly 2 months.
yeah.
No, you had the biggest match of the year, didn't you, against your dad?
Yeah, that's it. The most important match of the year.
And
then
you had to do that twice because you blanked the first time.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And then I've just worked every day pretty much. Been doing stuff.
To be fair, you have worked really hard, buddy. You've been putting the hours in. That's for sure.
Well, I'd rather be at work than sat at home watching something on TV. So
What, the mask?
yeah,
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
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 That's finished now. Now we've got Ant and Deck on a Saturday night. Oh,
Well, that'd be
definitely stay a bit later on a Saturday now.
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't heard the lockdown announcement today. Have you?
No. Well, there's all sorts of people have said this and that and blah, but we don't actually know for definite, do we? So 7 o'clock.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So because we're now bringing out the podcast every 2 weeks, obviously we can't talk about the lockdown, which is going to happen. The lockdown let me say that again. The end of lockdown announcements that will hopefully be mentioned tonight. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll know exactly what's going on, hopefully. So that will be pretty cool.
Yeah.
You guys might be able to get a match or two in towards the end if things are relaxed a bit. I don't know.
I think it was looking all right, but I don't know. I think you're looking more to the end of March. I think it's going to be a week too late for fishing, but you never know. Angling Trust might be able to work their magic again and maybe get it on before then. So,
Well, I think it all depends just what the government say, doesn't it? Because the Angling Trust does take a interpretation of the lockdown guidelines or tier lockdown guidelines or whatever we're in, and then try and layer it onto the sport. But we shall see. But yeah, to be fair to you, Alex, you have worked incredibly hard. You always work incredibly hard, but you've been full on, haven't you? And I think soon you're going to face probably one of the busiest times of the year at the fishery as well.
yeah, just from this weekend just gone, I think people want to get out and go fishing, and we're very lucky that fishing is one of the things that is allowed. So it's tough for match anglers because you could say in many ways that actual organised matches is probably safer than 50 or 60 pleasure anglers. So you could argue that, but we just got to be grateful that we can go fishing at the minute. And I think as the weather, you just from this last week, you're looking at people's faces, and there's more of a, people have got a bit more of a buzz and a spring in their step, haven't they? And the nights are drawing out. There's more and more geese appearing here every day, so that means we're getting closer and closer to the spring. Birds are singing in the morning. You're getting up at 5 in the morning, you're going outside, and all you can hear is birds. Before you get up, and it was like you could hear a pin drop.
You hear
rain,
rain hitting the windscreen.
Yeah. Rain, or a car on the snow or something.
Yeah,
but but no, it's going to be good for the fishing in general, I think, this year.
I think you're right. It certainly sings this week. The air temperatures have soared. I was just standing on the decking on yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, just chucking a little lure about just for half an hour, and there were 2 match anglers fishing just downstream. One of them was in Sir Bob's Peg. I did warn him that maybe he shouldn't be, sitting in Sir Bob's Peg. That might
Bob's Peg, yeah.
But so they were catching real steadily, and there was loads of people in the park, and there was loads of guys with rods, and people were. You're right. It's just like I think everyone's had a bit of enough of this now, and if they can safely get out and about, it'll be good.
Yeah,
and I think the commercials are going to be absolutely rammed.
Yeah,
That's not a bad thing. And also, that would lead us on nicely to what else I'm about to say. We've spoken about the restocking that you've done extensively at Rookery Waters. the last few months really. And what we'll do once we get through past the first section of the podcast, I've done a little montage of you and your dad stocking.
Yeah.
Yep. So people will be able to see some of the F1s that went into Crow Lake, and some of the hordes of roach that you put into Nutcracker.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice. I mean, obviously a lot of people have been sort of sat at home and looking on Facebook. Obviously, Facebook's massive these days, and we didn't want to sort of release too much and get people's backs up thinking, oh, I can't go and stuff like that. But I think soon as old Boris announces whatever he's going to announce, and we've got a plan of what we can and can't do, I think fishing is just going to go up a notch again, and people can come down and see what we've put in Crow, and they can see the changes and bits and bobs. And obviously we've been doing, that's why I'm covered in concrete today. We've been doing a couple of hits of that today, and more coming next week. And just see the improvements we've done and see what fish are going into the lakes. And we've had a few change arounds, not massive changes, but bit by bit we're improving it. So, and it's thanks to the people supporting us that we can reinvest the money back into the fishery. So,
I remember many years ago when I first came down to get the school kids involved. Down at, I spoke to you, James and Claire.
Yeah,
your dad and yourself put us in touch with them, and just to see how the complex has expanded in probably 15 years, 15 years I've known, is amazing. And it's I think that Crow Match Canal type lake is going to be amazing. It's going to throw out some massive lakes.
It's something different we haven't got here. I mean, we've obviously got a couple of Snake Lake canal style lakes. You've got Magpie, which is sort of here, there, and everywhere islands, lily pads, and a lot of people's favourite lakes. And it does frustrate me a little bit that there's still people coming, and there's people that haven't been to the fishery for years, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to fish Magpie." And you're like, "Well, have you tried any of the other lakes? And the other lakes are just as good, if not better now. And they're sort of underrated almost. I think people still think that Jay's full of little brown goldfish. Do you remember when you used to bring the school? It used to be full of them like that.
It did, yeah.
That's all changed, and Rook is totally different. There's lots of silvers in there now, and the carp are bigger, and obviously this Crow Lake is different to the rest of them. It's a bit wider. You only fish from one side, so there's a lot of interesting feeder fishing these days, and sort of method feeder, pellet waggler, bomb fishing. And it's another sort of different lake to the fishery, which is good. So for anglers that fish one venue or two or three venues, you sort of got lots of different tactics in one place almost, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. It'd be really good.
Whether you're a pleasure angler, you can chuck a little feeder, or if you're mad serious and want to catch loads of F1s and carp, you can do that. So that's the sort of what we've got planned. Obviously, we've got Nutcracker as well, which is predominantly silvers with a few carp. So again, some people don't want to catch carp all day, but with that, you've got eyed, barbel, chub, bit of everything, to be honest.
Yeah, cool.
Someone's trying to ring me.
Yeah, it's all gone paused. We'll just let it ring off.
Cheesy Bob's trying. You obviously want more worms, I think.
Oh, cheesy! It's
Bobfish.
Bobfish tench. It's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy.
Not easy being cheesy. No.
He just wants to be on the podcast again. That's all.
That's what it is. Yeah. Maybe it's a reminder.
Maybe it is.
Right. I'll tell you what it'll be. Can you ring me some more worms? He's ringing me again.
Is he? Oh dear. We'll just ignore him. So for those of you that can't see this, I'm looking at Alex with my FaceTime, and the whole thing's paused because cheesy fish tench is in the way. But I can still hear. All right, buddy. Well, we are unashamedly going to plug the commercial side of things quite heavily over the next few months, and I think from my perspective, one of the main reasons is because Rookery Waters now offers so much variety.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it, isn't it? You've got a huge amount of variety there now.
Yeah, I mean, we don't just want to be obviously, we've got the fishery here and it's brilliant, and in fact like that, we can take advantage of the fishery being here with perhaps some of the anglers fishing here when the matches start, some of the match anglers. But, maybe we could do some match results, maybe a few other, commercials that have got match results. So we can perhaps give those out as well. Not so it's just too rookery dominated, if you know what I mean. But
Well, there you go.
yeah,
That's an offer to other people, isn't it, who are listening into the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
If you are an owner of another local, well, it doesn't have to be local, does it? If you're an owner of another commercial fishery and you've got regular matches on, particularly in the close season, get in touch with us and we'll plug it for you.
yeah. I mean, there's lots of clubs obviously finished now when the river season finishes. But there's clubs like Ramsey that carry on. They have a different set of anglers then start fishing with them through the summer. So they've got those matches. There's plenty of club matches, but even if it's clubs that are looking for new members, perhaps that just do commercial fishing and they want to advertise their results. I mean, there's no results in the local paper now, is there?
Nah, zero, no.
Nothing. No, I mean, I used to get the free paper on a Wednesday, the Citizen, and there'd be all the Colin Clare, whatever his name was. Was
That's
it Colin?
right, yeah.
His name, yeah.
Yeah, and there's other
So you
guys
read
as well.
through that, and
Yeah.
there was Sprats, there was Fenland rods, there was March, obviously all the club matches. But nowadays you don't hear of any of those. And if people want to ring us or message us on Facebook or whatever, we can give them results out.
Yeah, we'll get a bit more socially media savvy with it all. We'll use Tales from the Tackle Shop as well. Maybe if people let us know, if we're not gonna, we're not able to chase people up weekly for results because obviously we've got 101 things we need to do as well. But if people want to use this as a platform, we're quite happy. That's what you're saying, I think, Alex, isn't it? We're quite happy just to spread the word of all these different matches and publicise the results, because it is about the main thrust of this is to promote angling, isn't it? And just make people not just to promote Rookery Waters. That leads us on nicely to, I think, what will be it is our main theme, and about promoting angling. And we need to talk about, even though we have a light-hearted podcast most of the time, I do think we need to delve deep sometimes into the odd fishery political issue. Now, I hate politics, and I hate fishing politics even more. So having to set up the Fenland Guardian scheme was just like something I just did not want to do. I just want to go fishing and catch big pike, if I'm being honest. Mm-hmm. But we have to be aware of what is happening locally and nationally with our fishing. And I think we do need to have a little chunter about something that the Angling Times are running with at the minute. And they brought out an article on the 12th of February, and they called it, Are the EA Failing Our Fisheries? And it's talking about the Environment Agency. Now, I'm going to talk about this, and I don't think Alex will know too much about the bits and bobs. So if I explain to you, Alex, as I'm talking,
right,
and if you interrupt me if I haven't made any sense,
mm-hmm.
And I'll try and explain this as best I can, because obviously I've got quite a lot of background knowledge about what has happened and other aspects of this, because I was involved at a very low level for a very short period of time, about 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, let me delve into this. Now, anyone who's interested, I'm just going to wave this in front of my GoPro. The Angling Times produced this article a couple of weeks ago, and I think they put it out on Facebook and other things, other forms of social media. And they're talking, the article's based around a guy called Dilip Sarkar. Now, Dilip Sarkar used to be in charge of let me use his ex-correct title. He was in charge, his role was the National Enforcement Support Manager, and part of that was being in charge of the VBS, which is the Voluntary Bailiff Service. Now, Dilip resigned last year, and Angling Times are running with this article, and I'm going to quote directly from the article. So if anybody wants to see where I've got this from, just delve into that. I'm just going to read it straight off the page. Dilip resigned. He wasn't happy at all what was happening with the volunteer bailiff service and the way the Environment Agency were not using the intelligence that they had produced. So some people already are probably going, Andy, what are you on about? So bear with me. Let me explain initially what the volunteer bailiff service is. The reason I know is I actually applied to join the volunteer bailiff service, I think in 2017, and I actually attended a training day. So the volunteer bailiff scheme is a scheme where volunteers apply, and they are anglers, and most of them will be existing bailiffs. Not all of them, but most of them will be. You apply to the scheme, you go through a little sort of vetting procedure, and then once you're accepted onto the scheme, you get invited to attend a training day. And this scheme is capped at 500 volunteers at the minute. Now, I'm going to say at this point, Alex, what I'm about to say for the next 5 minutes is no reflection at all on the guys on the ground. The volunteers are brilliant. They spend hour upon hour upon hour of their time being eyes and ears for this scheme. So it's capped at 500, but I would imagine over the last 8 years that it's been running, there must have been several thousand people involved who were in the scheme, then dropped out and so forth and so on. So personally, I would like to say to all the VBS, and we've got several who are part of the Fenland Guardian scheme, you guys are brilliant. You have spent so much of your time helping out. It is incredible. So the guys on the ground, the volunteers, fantastic. And the same has to be said for the Environment Agency enforcement officers. They're called FEOs, Fishery Enforcement Officers. Boots on the ground, do all the hard work, do all the trudging around down the drains, rivers and so forth, confronting people, trying to sort things out. These guys are brilliant, put in so much hard work. I just want to say that right at the beginning. Okay, so Dilip was the National Enforcement Support Manager, and he was part of his role was being in charge of the Volunteer Bailiff Service. Now, I'm going to read this straight from the article. So it says, the man who helped launch the Voluntary Bailiff Service has denounced it as a pointless waste of millions of pounds of public cash, because he says the Environment Agency rarely acts on the intelligence gathered. Dilip Sarkar resigned in frustration as the Angling Trust's National Enforcement Support Manager last summer after 8 years in the post. He's meeting Junior DEFRA Minister Rebecca Powell to seek an independent review into the allocation of $6 million of rod licence money. So already, hopefully it's raising a few alarm bells in people's heads and thinking, wow, that's an incredible amount of money that's been spent on this scheme. It goes on to say that Dilip says the VBS, which began in 2012 and trains unpaid anglers to provide eyes and ears on the bank, is a successful model copied by police forces to combat other areas of rural crime. But he claims the EA, which funds the scheme through the rod licence sales, has failed to act on reports rendering the VBS toothless. He said, unless the EA delivers the required end result, which is cooperating, engaging and acting upon intelligence received, the whole thing, through no fault of either the Trust Fishery Enforcement Support Service or the VBS, is a pointless waste of substantial public funds. The EA must be called to account. So as you can see, he's very, very frustrated to the degree where he actually resigned from the role. So if people are interested, look at the article. It goes on further about lockdown restrictions and so forth and the inactivity during lockdown, which I'm not going to talk about now, but that's for people to read. But towards the end of the article, and this is where it gets really into it, it says between August 2015 and October 2020, the Environment Agency paid the Angling Trust just over £6 million of rod licence cash to run the National Angling Strategy Service. This is a contract that they run with the Angling Trust, which I'll show you something about more in a minute, of which the VBS is a part. That money also covered the Trust's Fisheries Enforcement Support Service, FESS, which uses paid staff to oversee the VBS network. So I'm using lots of titles here, so I do apologise. Now, let me just show you this. I don't know if you can see that, Alex, at all. Can you see that?
Not really, mate, no.
This is just to give people a bit of kind of context to it. I'll explain to it. People can see it on the GoPro. What I did, several months ago, I found this on the internet. Now, this is a press release by the Environment Agency, and this particular press release was published 23rd of Jan 2019. And this explains the contract that the Anglican Times article was just talking about. A lot of people may not know this, but the Environment Agency contract out certain roles and responsibilities to be performed by an external agency. And at the minute, the Angling Trust carry these out. So I shall read this straight from the article. Following a competitive procurement process, the Environment Agency awarded the contract as part of a continued drive to work with partners to ensure freshwater fisheries thrive and encourage more people to go angling throughout England. The contract will run up to 4 years and is worth $1.15 million a year. It is funded by income from fishery licence sales. So what it's saying, in 2019, they're actually announcing that there was an extension of the already existing contract. It was going to run for probably another 4 years, and it's worth 1.15 million a year. It has several priorities. They include recruiting and retaining more anglers, providing expert advice on tackling non-native or invasive species and discouraging litter, sharing important information with anglers on fishery issues, such as through social media and other forums. And the last one is the VBS part, building effective enforcement partnerships with the police, angling clubs and fishery owners through the voluntary bailiff service, and building bridges project, aimed at educating and integrating migrant anglers about England's angling bylaws, laws and rules. So that contract goes hand in hand with what the Angling Times article saying, in that for the next 4 years, from 2019 to 2023, there's a 4-year contract of 1.15 million a year. So that's where they've got their figures from. And part of that is paying for this VBS. So there's quite a lot of money involved with this, as you can see. Now, the next thing that this article goes on to say is the Environment Agency said it estimates around 1.3 million of rod licence money has been spent directly on the VBS as part of the NASS scheme between May 2012 and October 2020. To run the volunteer bailiff service with these 500 volunteers, the scheme has a structure. So you've got the National Enforcement Support Manager's role at the top. So that role Dilip was doing was a full-time job, and it was paid between £29,000 and £39,000 a year, which, to be fair, is what you'd expect a role like that to be paid, isn't it, if you think about it? You're managing all those people. Underneath that, there are 6 regional enforcement managers. Now, this is where it all gets a little bit big-figured. These guys get paid 25 to 30,000 a year, but they're only contracted to work 18 and a half hours a week. So that's part-time, isn't it?
Sounds cushy.
It does sound cushy. There's also a communication manager's role, a national volunteers manager's role, and an intelligent manager's role, and the building bridges role. Now, I know that John Curry, secretary of the Pike Anglers Club, has got information from a Freedom of Information Act that around at least £230,000 a year is spent on wages just running the VBS. So this scheme is receiving an awful lot of money each year just to run, get the volunteers on board, and so forth and so on. And what Dilip's saying is the Environment Agency are spending all this money on this scheme, but they're not using the information that is supplied by the volunteers to act upon. And hence his frustration, and hence he's asking for this independent review. So as you can see, there's a real problem here with how our fishery enforcement is being managed at a national level. You know, the Environment Agency are one of the legal authorities, or probably the main one that we rely upon as anglers to deal with this. They're funding, or they're contracting out for these services, but the guy who was running the volunteer bailiff scheme is saying they're not acting upon the information. I'll just finish off this article. So here we go. It goes, clearly the total spent on VBS and the FESS would be a substantial proportion of the overall cost of the £6 million awarded. So he's saying from this contract that I showed you, a substantial part of this contract each year is spent on the VBS scheme. And this is a great concern because the Environment Agency is not capitalising on the demonstrable benefits of the FESS and VBS that provide. The Environment Agency, despite financing the exercise, has consistently obstructed progress and failed to cooperate. Now, these aren't my words. I'm reading this straight from the article. There's also been other resignations. The strained relationship between the VBS and the EA has led to resignations from the trust-paid regional enforcement managers, and Dilip claims a downing of tools by many disillusioned volunteer bailiffs. Chris Wood of Shrewsbury Anglers Club was a VBS area coordinator until resigning last year. He said, in 4 years, I never once had an FEO attend an incident I'd reported. No matter how many reports you posted, you would never get an officer to come out. And they've got a quote here from a former regional enforcement officer who resigned. The FES and FBS are a superb resource. The Angling Trust and Volunteer Bailiff Scheme and Angling Public are doing their bit by reporting matters. The sad truth is the Environment Agency are institutionally hostile to the Volunteer Bailiff Scheme and don't see the benefit volunteers and their intelligence can bring. It's time for the EA to resolve these issues or pass fisheries enforcement to an agency that will improve things for the benefit of all. So, it doesn't read well. I mean, there is a response from the Environment Agency. It's only fair that I read this out. We asked the Environment Agency if it was satisfied with the proportion of VBS reported incidents its officers responded to. Yes, said the spokesman. Incident response, patrols and operations as a result of intelligence analysis are separate issues. Intelligence logs from the Trust are sent to the Environment Agency's National Intelligence Team. Most of these are included with a monthly intelligence report, which is used to help influence where and when patrols are best deployed. To combat the illegal activity reported, we could do more if we had more resources available. And at the end, there's a bit from Jamie Cook, who we had on the podcast last year as well. So, interesting reading. If people are interested, it's the article released on February the 12th by the Angling Times. I did hear a whisper this was going to happen a few months ago, and I was just waiting to see what happened. So it's interesting that the guy who was running the scheme is now up in arms about the lack of response to it from the Environment Agency. So we will see where this takes us. So, Alex, did most of that make sense, what I was saying to you?
Yeah. I think I was following you, mate.
Cool. There's one last thing that I really want to mention, and this is a sort of personal thing, really. We set up the Fenland Guardian scheme last summer, end of August time, but it's been a thing that's been bubbling for a long, long time. And the reason we set the Fenland Guardian scheme up is because it's based on the water. So people might not understand what we've done, but we've run a pilot scheme, and we basically included the middle level, 16 foot, 20 foot, and we've branched out as other angling clubs have come on board. And what we've done, we've tried to plug people into parts of the drain, so the whole drain's covered. The volunteer bailiff scheme doesn't do this. It targets the volunteers. So basically, the volunteers are the important thing from the VBS. So, for example, let me give the 20 foot as an example, Alex, before the Fenland Guardian scheme started up. How long would you say it is? About 15 miles?
Well, the 20 foot?
Yeah. Roughly? 12, 15 miles?
Yeah, I'd say 12 tops.
Yeah, so it starts at Binnymore Fen, where it branches off from the old course of the Nene. It runs around to Goosetree Corner, so that part is leased by March and District. And then it runs from Goosetree Corner down to where it rejoins the old course of the Nene. Is it called Angle Bridge or something like that down there?
It's Angle Bridge, yeah.
So, for guys that don't know, Whittlesea Angling Association lease the stretch from Angle Bridge back to Goosetree Corner, and March and District run Goosetree Corner to Binnymore Fen. Okay, now, Whittlesea Angling Association discovered quite a lot of illegal activity of fish poaching in the early 2000s. So on their stretch of the 20 foot, they discovered individuals, people, or maybe gangs, taking fish, predominantly pike, out of the water. And there was a lot of confrontation with the anglers, the local anglers, and other people taking fish. So I know Whittlesea Angling Association, they upped their bailiff strategy. They got more people to help out, and they started to really just clamp down on this illegal activity. And I know Whittlesea are also very keen to get on board with the volunteer bailiff scheme. So Whittlesea Angling Association have a bank of bailiffs, and most of them are VBS members. So what they've done, they've worked incredibly hard, and they've managed to basically stamp out most of the poaching that they were struggling with a few years ago, 10 plus years ago. So they've got this sorted. Now, what do you think's happened to those fish thieves, Alex?
They've gone somewhere else.
Yeah, they haven't stopped. They've gone somewhere else. Exactly right. Now, I'll give you a classic example of this. Where they went was probably 3 or 4 miles downstream, round Goosetree Corner, on the March stretch. Now, we know, we had just saying about Cheesy Bob earlier, basically Cheesy Bob runs the whole of Marchant District on his own, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, bless him. He works full time. He's a stall holder, and he tries to run the angling club. Your granddad was bailiff for a long time, wasn't he? Yeah, and he used to work his nuts off, didn't he? Bailiff in that water. Yeah. So you got your granddad and Cheesy Bob running around trying to do everything. But basically, what's happened is Whittlesea was so good at clamping down on the poaching, it just dispersed them to other waters, which is going to. It's not Whittlesea's fault. They've just done the right thing. So the section of the 20-foot from Goose Tree Corner down to Binney Mill Fence started to get absolutely hammered, and we found pike heads and gill nets and so forth and so on. So this is where the VBS scheme falls down. It doesn't cover the whole of the water. It covers where the bailiffs are going to bailiff, because they've only got a certain amount of time. They can only do their own water. They're not going to go and do someone else's water because they just physically haven't got the time. And why should they? So this is a really good example. Whittlesea bailiff their stretch brilliantly. Now on Sunday evenings, they will send intel off to this central scheme. I can't remember how it works, but basically it's either the individual VBS bailiffs send a report off, or it gets centralised by an organiser. It then gets collated into intel, which the VBS coordinators use along with the Environment Agency. So you can imagine the Whittlesea guys sending off their reports every Sunday, no incident, no incident, no incident, where in reality, 2 or 3 miles downstream on the 20-foot, we've got incident after incident after incident that no one knows about because Marchant District haven't got enough bodies to be out bailiffing. So the EA would get this information about the 20-foot and think, brilliant, that drain hasn't got any incidents at all. Whereas in reality, it's probably one of the hottest hotspots in Fenland, which it was up to probably was up to November time. What people won't realise, unless they're members of the Fenland Guardian scheme, is that we found 6 gill nets, about 3 fish traps, and other illegal activities, all from August to November last year, happening at Shepperson's Bridge on the 20-foot. And one of our local enforcement officers, Environment Agency enforcement officers, who work really hard, actually told me that he could base himself in March. There were that many incidents on that stretch of water. So you can see that in my head, the VBS scheme's flawed because you got all these guys working so hard, bailiffing their stretches of water, but what happens to the next bit of drain downstream, or the lake that's just around the corner, or the river that doesn't have any bailiffs on, you see? This is the problem. The reports going in will give a very skewed version of what's going on because they can only report what they see. But if it's brought together, for an area locally, it's not going to be accurate for what is actually happening on different areas of waterway. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, and the reason I wanted to sort of highlight it to everybody, is that I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about the future of our angling, not now, but I am concerned now, but maybe for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, we need to have natural venues that are thriving, because that's our fishing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Commercials are fantastic, and Rookery is a great example of a very well-run commercial, but at the end of the day, we go fishing because we want to get out into the wilds, we want to catch our natural stock. And it worries me when I see people like Dillip resigning from a role because he's incredibly frustrated, obviously trying to find answers out. And these are the people who have been managing the enforcement nationally, along with the Angling Trust and the Environment Agency. And you just think, wow, there's a lot more to this than we know about. What is going on and what isn't going on. Basically, are we in good hands? This is what I worry about. I would like to think we are, but I'm seeing too much that makes me wonder, maybe enforcement isn't the top priority for the Environment Agency. Maybe they're interested in doing other things, and maybe enforcement isn't something they feel they can handle. I don't know, because there's too much going on, and we shouldn't have to set up the Fenland Guardian scheme. I've got better things to do than set that up. Not interested in fishery politics at all, but I'm blowed if I'm going to let my heritage be destroyed because people are nicking fish, basically. So it is a major worry. hopefully I made that last bit quite clear as well. I mean, did it come across okay to you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And hopefully people take this the right way. I'm not blaming anybody. There's been an incredible amount of hard work by a massive amount of people. But it does seem that all that hard work has been wasted, really. And if this amount of money is being spent on this scheme and it isn't being taken seriously, is the wrong word. If the data and intel's not being used, then really they should stop now. Stop the scheme. Stop spending all this money. The worst thing they could do, and this is the worst thing, is employ more enforcement officers with that money as a stopgap, have a review of the whole thing, and then go again with something that actually works. That to me would be a really good idea, but what do I know? I'm only an angler. But I think this is the last thing I want to say on this, Alex. We are the customers of the Environment Agency and people who are members of the Angling Trust. You know, you're members of the Angling Trust. I think we need to start asking questions rather than accepting what we're told. I think people have a right to demand value for money, and people have a right to know exactly what is going on. So when we get things like this pop up, you know, we want to know what's going on exactly, and we want to see something positive come out of it.
yeah.
That's the important thing. If something's gone wrong and it's not worked, okay, I can live with that as long as we learn from it and something more positive comes off it and we see an improvement of what's been going on. Sorry to have droned on, but I just felt that that's popped up. I knew it was coming and I just wanted to raise it so most guys out there perhaps won't have known about any of this. And, you know, I think I just wanted to kind of pin it up there so people knew what's going on, so we can keep an eye out, be aware of what's happening, and just sort of, ask the positive questions. Right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut up. We'll add the montage in of Rookery, a bit more light-hearted approach. We'll have a few minutes of that, and we'll come back to me and Alex. So, if you are listening via audio podcast, you're going to miss the next bit out, so I do apologise, but the easiest thing is watch us on YouTube. It's far more visual, and you'll see the montage. So, everybody, we'll be back in a mo.
So today is the second lot of stocking on Crow Lake. We've had £2,000 of F1s going today and a few bits and pieces. Initial stocking was last week where we had £2,000 of nice chunky mirrors and commons. And then we've got a few more fish to go in, just of a bit bigger stamp, just so it's not all take your brain out and catch a million little fish, just so you've got something to come back in the last hour. And obviously not all anglers want to catch small fish. The lake's probably 25 metres wide, it's 5.5, 6 foot deep maximum, nice shelf on the inside, 25 pegs. You're going to do a bit of feeder fishing, a bit of pellet waggler fishing, and then obviously your pole fishing. Reason why we've gone for that mix is just so that everyone's got a chance of competing. You haven't got the younger anglers catching a million fish and the older anglers perhaps not being able to keep up to speed. Whereas with them better fish in there, they can always turn it around in the last hour or two with a few margin fish. Or if the wind's bad, you haven't got to fish a pole at 13 metres, you can chuck a feeder out and catch a few like that.
Okay, right, we're back again. Alex has just been running around the tackle shop making sure everything's in place, and I think you're okay. You've got no intruders.
No, I think we're all right, mate.
Cool.
My cat trying to get in or something.
The what, bat? You got a pet bat?
Cat.
Oh yeah, the black cat. Yeah, very friendly cat. Okay, we got a question from the podcast 2 weeks ago. The gladiator Marcus Aurelius has been in touch again.
Oh yeah, the Spaniard.
The Spaniard, yeah. Let me try and get this correct because I'm trying to memorise the question rather than reading it off the screen, so I might get this slightly wrong. He wanted to know if there was a difference between using Dacron or
what the differences are.
between Dacron and what was the other thing I said to you off air?
Connector, standard connector.
Yeah, standard connector for pole connectors. So, Alex, over to you on this one.
Right. So, this is it's all personal choice. This one. There's about 6 different ways you can attach your pole rig to your elastic. Obviously, the traditional way was with a connector. I might have one here actually. It's quite handy. Well, all there.
Oh,
So that's your standard connector.
Didn't even set that up, did we?
No, we didn't. Literally, it's just here. So that's your standard connector with your elastic goes in, you slide this sleeve back, tie it on, and you just put a loop in the end of your line, slide the sleeve, put it round, clip it back on, job's a good one. These went out of favour just because they're quite heavy and sort of cumbersome, they're a bit clunky, but they're easy and practical. So I would say this is still the most popular way of attaching your pole rig to your elastic. Then there obviously was crow's foots, which is basically tying a loop in the end of elastic and cutting the piece of the loop bit so it looks like a crow's foot. And then you just tie a big loop in your main line and a smaller loop, and then you pass the main line through the middle loop that you've made. Basically, what you'll have an oval and a circle, and you put it through this oval, big oval one, round the end of the crow's foot that's like this, and then elastic pulls in tight to the knot.
You're not going to believe this.
What?
You set me up in Mill View
Right,
with pole elastic in one of my poles.
right.
I've still got it in that pole.
You still got it in there?
And I still use it, yeah.
Well, let's work that one out then, shall we? Be 5 years I've been here. Another probably 6 years. So it's probably 12 years old, that elastic.
Should I change the elastic? It still works.
I think you must have read the label where it says "Do not let sunlight reach it." I think you've done a good job of that, don't you?
Oh, it's not seen much sunlight, mate, no. But when you said the crow's foot, I went, yeah, that's the method I use because I've still got those ones that you made for me.
Yeah, they're crow's foot. I'm just trying to find a DAC one. Hang on. So these are Dacron connectors. So the advantage of these is the Dacron pushes the your main line away from the end of the pole. So obviously a lot of fishing now on commercials, you're flicking your rig over. Even on the drains, you're fishing fast, you're flicking your rig over. With the traditional connectors, you tended to get spin ups and tangles. These just eliminate that. It's nice and pushes it away from your pole, especially when you're fishing for F1s and things like that. The stiffer the better, really, because it's away. You've got more of you miss less bites, basically. It's probably a little bit fiddlier for attaching your rig and that, and most of the time you end up biting the loops off and retying the loops, so it's maybe a little bit slower, but you can see they're the old Dacron connectors. I personally, for my rivers and drain fishing, the lighter elastics, I use the crow's foot way and just put a little bead on the elastic and just keep checking it every time I put a rig on. Just run it through my fingers or tongue, just see if there's any frays in it, and that's the way I do it. But like I say, there is no right and wrong way. I think whatever suits the angler and what confidence you got as well, to be honest, mate.
Yeah,
definitely.
Good answer. I think that's probably the best answer in most rigs, or the little finesse things that you do in angling. No matter what branch of angling you're into, use the thing or the knot that you've got confidence in that works
Yeah.
for you. Yeah, good answer. Right, so hopefully the Spaniard that's answered his. I don't know if he did. I wouldn't have thought a gladiator would use a roach pole, would you? A pole? Probably use a
No.
branch or something, but that answers that for him. I've got one thing that I would like to mention that's a very quick thing and a very positive thing, which people will be really glad to hear that I'm not droning on about something negative. We're trying to organise a litter pick. Now, trying to organise a group of people in the unknown lockdown tier system, whatever we're going to go into, is not going to work. So this is the grand plan. We're going to try and target the weekend of the 20th to 21st of March. So I've cunningly chosen the first weekend after the close season.
Yeah.
So hopefully most people might be able to free up an hour or two. And what we're asking people to do, if they could just walk along a stretch of waterway that's local to them. So if we're still in lockdown, hopefully not, we can still abide by the lockdown rules. If we're in a tier system, then obviously that will work as well. So if people can just walk along a stretch of waterway and basically just pick up the rubbish, because what's happened with the flood water that we've had, an awful lot of plastic and rubbish has been pushed up the banks, and it's become really visible. Obviously, we didn't know it was there before, or it's come from.
And then fishermen get blamed for it.
Well, I'm not really bothered about the blame, but I think fishermen do get blamed for it when it's not.
Yeah,
theirs.
they do.
Yeah, I bet they do. But at the end of the day, let's not focus on that one. But you're probably right. And I think what's happened is the floodwaters pushed the stuff up the bank, the rubbish, and because the reeds are all down or been chopped down by the drainage boards, everything's really visible. Yeah. And if we can get this picked up before the reeds start to grow, it's going to make a massive difference. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whose rubbish we are, because rubbish it is, but we use the river. Let's be responsible and pick it up. So if guys can just take their family, go for a walk that weekend, or as has already happened, people would have seen posts I put on Facebook. I've had several people send me in pictures already of litter picks that they've done, which has been amazing. Yeah. People have already, they said, Andy, I can't do that weekend, so we've decided to do one already. So I've had several people sending me pictures. I've had one family, I won't mention their name because I know they just like to say very behind the scenes, but I'm just going to say the family B, thank you very much. They had a big pick last week and sent me a picture. So we're asking people to do this. Now, if people want to send me pictures, you can do it via talesfromthetackleshop@gmail.com, or you can do it via Tales from the Tackle Shop on the Messenger. This is the important thing, though. If you're involving families and children, we can't have pictures of children front on. It has to be looking at a group of people and the children from behind. It's to do with child protection issues, which is incredibly sad that I have to say this, but sadly that's the world we live in. So if they're going to send any pictures of children, it has to be where the child can't be identified. That makes sense. Adults it's fine, but children it's not. And technically, using my teacher hat, I think it's up to the age of 19 now, so we have to be careful with that if people are sending us pictures over the internet. So sadly I have to mention that one, but it'd be great to put together all the pictures of all the people helping out, and it'd be great to know the volume of rubbish that we've collected, because I think that it's going to be really good. So we've had a very positive response from a lot of people already, but obviously we're going to keep mentioning this as we get to that weekend. And as a final thing on this, and I'm going to get the titles completely wrong, I've had different groups from around the Ramsey area contact me out of the blue who are doing their own litter pick up that end as well, because I think there's a lot of litter was discovered from the floodwater from the Ramsey end of the system, and they're getting that into place. I've got a Zoom meeting with them next week, and I will know more details, and once I get the correct titles of everybody's names, I'll mention them on the following podcast. So momentum's picking up, so that's a really good thing. So if everybody could just keep an eye out for Tales from the Tackle Shop Facebook page, I'll post up more information. And if we can just even pick up 3 or 4 bits of rubbish each, that's going to make a difference, isn't it? And that would be really good. And now's the time to do it. Do you remember last year, Alex, we had planned for a mass litter pick throughout March, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you were going to get a lot of the anglers involved. I know
Yeah.
Kai from the Environment Agency was involved. FTC were going to help out. Middle level commissioners were going to help, and we had to pull the plug on at the last minute because obviously the pandemic struck.
Right.
That would be good. Right, buddy. Is there anything else that you'd like to add this week?
No, just hopefully old Boris gives us some positive news tonight. Earlier, just one match before the end of the season would be nice, wouldn't it?
It'd be nice to get on the old course of the Nene because it's fishing its nuts off, isn't it?
Yeah. Cheesy had a carp in the week. It's another carp caught out of the river.
Yeah.
Mad.
This is a funny tale. Was it Darren you said was talking to me yesterday?
Yeah, Ed Sheeran lookalike.
And he was saying that Cheesy had this £4 carp out of the river.
Right.
And then by the time the story had evolved,
Yeah.
it had gone from one £4 carp to 4 £3 carp.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so now he's apparently had 4 £3
Oh,
carp out the
I
river.
tell you, he's good old Cheesy, you know.
I'm not saying it's him that changed the story, but I think the Chinese whispers game, you know. So
Yeah.
apparently now he's had 4 in that session. He had 4 river carp, £3 each. Oh, I've got to tell you my Bob Nudd story before we go.
Bob Nudd.
Oh yeah, I was ever so embarrassed. So Sir Bob was in his peg opposite the Blue Barge doing his live feed.
Yeah.
And I've come out down the front, and I thought, oh, he's doing his live feed. I better not shout anything to him. So I was popping out to do a bit of BFS fishing on my boat, and I waited for him to finish as I was just getting all the water off the tarpaulin and getting it sorted. And I was having a chat with him, and obviously talking about the podcast and whatever. And I think he might come on if we can get him on.
Yeah.
Good, yeah. And then I got my stuff ready. And he's catching some quality roach, and then got my outboard engine on the back, started her up, she burst into life, and then died. I flooded the engine. Now, if anyone, this doesn't sound...
You got excited, didn't you? Because it was Bob Nudd. That's what it was.
I did, actually. I thought, there's Bob Nudd.
Yeah.
Good, it's Bob Nudd.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my engine's stalled, and I flooded it. Now, if anyone knows anything about little... Oh, are you still there? I've lost him. Hello.
Hello, my phone's just died. Literally. I was looking at you, and then everything just went blank.
Oh, mate, this is brilliant. So I was...
So what we're doing now, I'm ringing you back, am I, or what?
Yeah, we're still recording. It's absolutely fine. But I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you what happened. My Bob Nudd story was that boring that your phone
Mate,
just...
Don't go to sleep.
Yeah. Do you know what we're going to do? I'm going to keep everybody in suspense, and I shall bore everybody in 2 weeks' time in the end of my Bob Nudd story. I think that's all we can do. I've lost. It's lost its impetus. There's no way I can make this funny, even though it probably wasn't funny anyway. But yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do, buddy. We'll pull the podcast to a natural close with the breakdown in the tech. Is the GoPro still working? Or have you moved?
Yeah, GoPro's on, mate. Yeah,
Oh.
we haven't switched that one off.
No. Right, stay on the line, and what we'll do, we'll just say goodbye to everybody. So everyone listening, it just shows everybody how live this is, and we're trying to comply with lockdown regulations, and that's why we have all these problems. But we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Everybody stay safe, and let's be hopeful that maybe, just maybe, there's a chance of one fishing match before the end of the season. So this has been Tales from the Tackle Shop, a Fenland Fishing TV production.